Our next presenter, colleague of mine, someone I actually don't have to look at the sheet for, is Nelson Peng. Nelson's urban designer out of our San Francisco office, and he's going to carry you through lunch. So welcome, Nelson.
All right, let me see if I can get this working. Talking about AI, we have to deal with the 20th century's technology first. All right, thanks, Scott. So I'm Nelson Peng. I'm the urban design studio lead for the San Francisco and Berkeley office. So I'm from California. We got flood. We don't have hurricane, but we have wildfire. We have earthquake. And what's even better, you know, everything is very expensive in California. So if any of that shit hit, it's very expensive to fix. So it's my sincere hopes that each of you will have a very successful career in the future. Our life depends on it. All right. By the way, I promise you won't see a single formula or a number on my slides. So that should facilitate your lunch. Oh, how does this work? Let me see. Okay, as I pointed out, HDR is one of the largest firm, right, Scott, in the world. So when we first joined, it was like, wow, awesome. There are 13,000 people in it, and more than half of them are architects and engineers. And then there are around 25 of us that's urban planner. So the existence of urban designer, urban planner in HDR is very similar to our first presenter when she was talking about how much money was allocated to the resiliency. But why am I here to talk? I guess one of the key issues today is about community. And urban designer is actually at the centerpiece. We deal with people who built communities, and we're also directly dealing with people who are using the community as the citizen. So today, I'm just going to walk you through what urban designers are doing, and then see if some of you in a hardcore engineering can help us. So this is one of my favorite buildings in the US. It's the Seattle Central Library. It was designed by Ram Koolhaas. The program is still like a normal building, right? It's stacked on each other, and then different layers are jutting out or resetting. So it created a very dynamic form. And then the inside, look, it's very interesting. But what interests me most is that how much attention this architect spent trying to form an interesting interplay between outside on the street and the inside. And then so it becomes part of the community. It's really nice to walk around and see people who are looking at you. You know, you observe people looking at you. It's like two stage. Funny enough, the same architect did this in Beijing. People in Beijing called it big pants. So he paid no attention to the street level, and then just kind of achieved his wildest dream there. And then by the end of the project, actually, somebody set a fire and burned its tail off. So it's the same architect. Why? He spent so much attention to how that building sits in the context while pays no attention in another city. People may argue, well, it's different use, different owners. But what I can see is the lack of urban designer in this way. So the client has no idea what's the role his buildings play. And then so kind of set off and let the architect achieve the wildest dream in his professional life. As a matter of fact, this is the urban design guideline in Seattle. They would never allow Ram Koolhaas to design a big pants in their city. As you can point out, the PL number 3, it says that you have to have street level interactions. So what does urban designers do? I like this guy. He's a Danish urban designer called Jan Gehl. He wrote a lot of books. And he called himself, or call ourselves, urban quality consultant. So we are kind of dealing with all the built environment, all the elements. Make sure they put it together, and not only the users, but also everyone else can feel comfortable. And then if you are traveling to Paris, you probably, some of the major landmark like the Louvre Museum, and then maybe the Luxembourg Park will be in your bucket list. That falls into the realm of the architect and landscape architect. But I think the chances are your Instagram will fill with more photos of you walking in the tree-lined boulevard, or kind of walking in the street in the neighborhood that filled with the street-level shops, or sipping coffees in the corner cafe. And then that's the realm of what we're doing, urban designers. Leon Cryer, another famous urban designer, has this graphic. He's saying the most successful city, a true city, consists of iconic building, usually should be public, and then there's the large amount of them should be just the context. They together form a true city. For a lot of people who were from here, that doesn't resonate with our daily life. Especially for me, it was like, well, my daily life was with highways, strip malls, and office park. But actually, real nice city like this one, this is Heidelberg in Germany. So I believe they're one of the few cities that is not bombed during the World War II. And then it has the oldest university in Germany. It's like 1300 or something. And then in the whole town, actually, there are only 3 or 4 iconic buildings. But the context is what matters. All the context works so hard to frame a view to that 3 or 4 iconic places that people likes. So if you allow the architect to pick what do you want to work for, iconic buildings? Yeah, of course, he would definitely do that. Every single architect want to do some iconic building in his lifetime. So without urban designers holding a short leash, I think this is what they're gonna end up with. Every single building needs to be a kind of a landmark. So while architects have their own design patterns, what's the pattern we are looking for? So urban designers look for the pattern of street pattern. That's the first thing. Let me go through a quick overview of what the street pattern in the US are. So in the 18th centuries, most of those streets are laid out by surveyors, engineers. Obviously, they don't talk to each other, so that's why sometimes you see 2 kind of grid colliding with each other. But that's actually where most of the iconic Flatiron building sits. This is San Francisco. That is Market Street. And then, but not all the 18th, 19th century grid is boring. Some of the places can be very intriguing. Like in Philadelphia, and also in Savannah, they kind of build their grid, street grid, with their open space to form an interesting walking experience. And then by the turn of the century, we are heavily influenced by the Beaux-Arts in French. And then, so the idea of the roundabout and then the idea of the radiating boulevard was introduced. The best example in the city is DC. And then in the suburb, people are also building streetcar suburbs that have this kind of a meandering street that following the terrain. Then back in the 1950s, we started to fast expansion of the highway and also build suburbs to house the veterans coming back from the World War II. And then you can see that at that time, the suburbs doesn't look like the suburbs you're looking at right now. They still have very interconnected street networks that all connects to the highway, then connects to job in downtown. And then from that to maybe now, the fast expansion of highway is still happening. And then in the city, what they're doing is they're taking out a lot of the neighborhood that belong to people of color. And then in the suburbs, the fast expansion of the suburbanization is keep happening with lower density of development and the lower density of street network. But in the 1990s, starting from the US, we have a group of people called New Urbanists, and we are actually part of them. The office that I have been working for 15, 16 years is one of the founders for the New Urbanism movement. What they're trying to do, what we are trying to do is trying to learn from the past, some good examples, and then to achieve a city that are preserving the nature, that are mixed use and the walkable and bikeable. Maybe our colleagues from Japan and colleagues from Italy can resonate that. That's basically your daily life, but it's a rare thing in the US, if you haven't noticed. By the way, Omaha is not that bad. If you go other places, even worse. So how can we do streets and achieve all that? So let me give you a very interesting example. This is 2 middle schools. One is called Stanley Leho Hills, and one is a double peak middle school. They're only 2 miles, so 3.2 kilometers for our international friends apart. They're in the same neighborhood, but one of them is tightly knitted to the community. The buildings are up to the streets, and then kids can actually walk and bike from their home to their school. The other one, as you can see, it's right by a big road, and then so their parents have to drive them every day to school. For kids that age, they're crying out for independence, so that's actually not very nice if they have to get in the car dealing with their parents. So the big differences in the design move is that we changed the large street and split it into what we call a couplet, a two-way, a pair of two-way one-way street, a set of parallel one-way street. That's how we put it. And then because of that, we lower the speed of the car that passing through it, and then we make it pedestrian crossing safer. And then the building are willing to come closer to the street. That changed everything. So back in the days, in the 1990s, when my boss built that neighborhood, it took very expensive engineering simulations and data, and also a big name for him to convince a very bold developer to build that. But nowadays, with all the tools that we have, it's actually very easy for us to do some very simple simulations to explain to our client. And actually, we can even do this. So we can create a very nice animation to show our intention. So here you can see we're doing the road diet. We're bringing the street from like 4 meters down to 3 meters. We reallocate the right of way, and then we split it up. And then in the middle, we can put either a park, some passes, some nice community space, just like what we did earlier in San Elijo Hills case. And then also, by the way, I turned off the background music. I don't like it. And then the intersection is actually what matters. This is usually what a 6-lane and 6-lane intersection looks like. But if you split it up, the section looks very different. It's smaller, easier for people to cross. Here goes the benefit. So first of all, crossing. For the traditional intersection, it takes a long time to walk. And then in this case, it's actually much easier. And then we also have the traffic simulation to prove that the efficiency of the intersection is better, because in traditional settings, we have 4 different faces per each direction, if I remember right. And then so there's a lot of conflict points. But for the couplet intersections, the conflict point is greatly reduced, and then we can actually do the platooning to make sure cars goes more efficient. So when I said, well, we lowered the speed of cars, but in general, we actually improved the efficiency for cars and the pedestrian. And then also building are easier to get closer to the street. Oh. And then there are even more interesting ideas coming out in our industry where they use technology to change the paving of the street. So street is become a space that is not just for transportation. Sometimes it can be used as community use. I believe In Barcelona, some of the area are experimenting it. And then in Toronto, Google tried to do that, but because of the data privacy issue, they gave up. But some of the idea is still very interesting for us to explore. So besides for street patterns, what kind of other patterns are we looking for? So for urban designer, we're also looking for development pattern, and we, in the US at least, we call it a place type. It helps shape the future of our community by focusing on the look and the feel of the places, their form and character, instead of focusing on land use. This is one of the examples Dallas is using. As you can see, they identified 12 different place types in their cities. And each of the place type, they identify, okay, what kind of uses can go into it and how the physical setting should be pieces together. And then this is the map. So this very tool offers the planners and urban designer a tool, the kind of a broad brush way of painting the city without stipulating every single use. So there's a flexibility and a big thinking behind it. Kelso Associate that I used to work for, now part of HDR, actually developed a tool called Urban Footprint that can do this based on place type easily. I think they offer students account. You can experiment. I noticed there's also other speakers earlier talking about some resilience tools. Maybe they can work together. By the way, Urban Footprint is now a spin-off. It has not part of HDR. But we, as planners and urban designers in HDR, use that a lot. In this case, we built like a 3 planning scenario for Bentonville for an interview. We built this within less than an hour. So we show like what's the existing, and in the center, what's the business as usual, where all the suburban housing goes to the southwest of the city. And then another case where they do mixed use, high density development along the existing commercial corridor. And then within 15 minutes, all the results can pop up, including like all the statistics about transportation, water use, energy use, and the emissions. And then we also try to bring place type outside of the US. This is the project I'm currently doing in Saudi Arabia. It's a region called Hyle. It's a desert town. And then we also identified different place type. So in this region, by the way, it's 40,000 square miles, the size of Ohio. We identified 6 different place types by the street network, and also building coverage, the population density, which informs clusters and destination, land use mix, civic amenities, and also, so I'll quickly go through one by one. First is the urban center that only exists in the Hiles and is the capital of their region that has a very organic street pattern, which also is a historical town. And then also the next one is called Urban Community 1. This is where when modern planning hit Saudi Arabia, they have the MoMA standard. So you have more octagonal layout. And then Urban Community 2 also follows this pattern, but it's newer development, so the density is slightly lower and leaving large area for mosques and open space. We also have the Rural Center, which is the historical kind of midpoint serving the historical routes. And this is the Rural Community 2. They composed of like long strip land that usually populated with dates farm and farmhouses. The lastly is the Rural Community 2. They represent the lowest density, large plot, accommodating for the circular irrigation system. And then there also are special uses. Saudi Arabia has a dominance in terms of public investment. A lot of the single-use functional zone are one of the dominating elements in there. So we identified all these 7 place types, and then that become the building block of our regional planning for Hyle. I'm going to skip this and go to the next one. Well, now we have the 7 place type. Can we do it? because in most of the cases in the US, we kind of can manually handle it, but if you look at the size, 40,000 square miles, I don't think we can do that. And what's worse, there is a significant lack of data in that country. This is the Google image of Al Haid. It's the historical town there. Actually, the very famous Fadak town was right south of it. Where you see it used to be a very fertile land, belonged to the Prophet Muhammad. Then later gave it to his daughter Fatima. But this is the data we have. That's from all the data they have. They only cover the newer part of the town, but leaving all the historical town like basically empty, and then the information is wrong. So HDR GIS team came in and helped us with a supervised classification modeling process. I promise that there's no data, but I have to read some of the terminology. To look at the Sentinel-2, the remote sensing data. What's amazing here is that because it includes not only the visible lights, but also invisible lights. So in this case, you can see that where our eyes cannot see in the center, the park, they identify, they actually show the whole shape with the swaths and the palm trees. And then with that information, we covered very nicely of the built environment in Al Haid. I believe this speaker earlier from Italy, I think your PhD student did something similar to identify most of the buildings in Turin, right, in your hometown. And he did a nicer job. I don't know how he identified structure by, maybe it's a different approach. Maybe we can talk later if he's interested in working HDR. But with that information, we also have a kind of a machine learning process of feeding all the information we identify from processing that Sentinel-2 remote sensing data and feed it into a grid. And then that becomes our base map to start the regional planning process. Okay, so I talked about a lot of the tools that we developed helped for the project, but what are the tools we are helping for if we are just an urban designer at working in the company? Is there any life saving? So this part is from a younger colleague. So he said it's a Friday morning and you're happy enjoying your coffee and thinking about your weekend plan. And then usually one of the design principal, your boss, will come in and show up with a hand sketch of 8,000 acres of a new town with 667 streets. That's kind of the scale HDR planners usually deal with. And they say, hey, Nelson, isn't it nice if you can get this done before the client start their week? And then the process, I'm not sure how many architects are here. Usually, you trace his master's center line, you offset it to form the street, and then you trim the center line, and then you fillet it to form the street corner, and then you offset it to become the puzzle. That's kind of the tedious work every designers have to do. I mean, I hope I don't bring any bad memories from you, but the whole process is really sad. So my younger colleague is being smart enough. He reached out to Scott's team in Sydney and developed something that's amazing. So basically what we have right now here is a automation of street generation. It's not on the shelf. You don't buy it. We custom-made it in HDR. So we create different library of streets, custom-made. And then as long as we have the center line, we can click it and then generate according to our selection from that library. And all the street details, including trees, can be generated, and then all the intersection will be dealt with. Saved us a lot of labor hours. And then this tool is trying to generate puzzles. It's still in development, and then generate 3D buildings. Let me see if you can get this. So it has the function of creating massing and changing the massing according to different zoning rules. And then also they put the data on top so people can see it easily. And then the other part of what we're doing is the visual analysis component. So you remember earlier when I talked about Heidelberg in Germany, where a successful city really have their context building to frame the views for context. So this is what it will be used for. We analyze how people walk through a built environment and what they see to evaluate the kind of the visual quality of that building environment. So nowadays, with more and more computing power, right? Clients, people, or people who we're living with are demanding more quantitative results. I think in the morning, a lot of the speakers talk about how we quantify, threat, vulnerabilities, how to quantify a result so people can buy your product and be on the same page. That's actually also influencing our urban design industry greatly too. Urban design used to be a very traditional practice where qualitative input takes the majority and then takes the big names. I mean, if you're famous designers, yeah, you may get your way better than entry level. But that's changing. The sooner or later, our client is going to tell this, in God we trust, all other bring data, right? So we have to bring data to this industry, but how do we do it? That's kind of stuff we are trying to think in HDR for planners. So we know people love using scores to rank stuff. We have where is your university ranked compared to others? How is your company is one of the best employees, or how is the movie, right? And then there's a systematic way how we score buildings. We have the LEED system, the leadership in energy and environmental design. They have different matrix and have different ranks. And then there are a lot of effort put into trying to score cities, but they are usually single element focused. We can evaluate on safety, we can evaluate on economy, by GDP, and we also have a park score in the US where you evaluate how good your parks are in that city, and also based on walkability. If you have any experience buying or selling houses, now this is part of the stuff in there. Okay, your house 98 means it's a walker's paradise. But can we create an urban scoring system based on our urban design principles? So we mentioned earlier, this is kind of the principle new urbanists come by. And then we actually documented really well in this book, Ending Global Sprawl. It's written by HDR in collaboration with the World Bank. And the people who wrote it is Peter Kelsoff, my boss, who gave us that 667th Street to draw on Friday. So most of the principles he has in that book, by the way, you can download it for free, has 10 principles. They are very qualitative. And so what we are thinking is, if Peter is not presenting, if a big boss is not presenting, is there a way for younger professional to be there and stood our ground and say something that is forceful? So this is what we're trying to see if we can change his qualitative design principle to a more quantitative evaluation matrix. It's comparing to all your slides. This is probably like an entry-level child play. We don't have much complicated calculation, but it's one step towards that direction. We are actually asked by a client in China to evaluate how they're doing one of the mass plan in Suzhou. They built a high-speed rail station and trying to build a new town around that high-speed rail station. And said, well, Nelson, we really like to work with you, but we have already done our urban design by another famous US firm. Can you tell us how this plan is? So this is where we enter, right? Instead of trying to go, I think this looks nice, we're trying to give them some quantitative instructions. So we look at the plan and evaluate them on the 10 aspects we have calculated, and then we handpicked 6 districts for benchmarking that got the consensus from the client. So as you can see that the plan only scores 52, and it's lower than all the 6 benchmarking objectives, like cases. But from there, we give them very solid step to improve. Ideally, you can add green infrastructure that will put 2 points around the stations, and you can add some stormwater harvesting device that will give you 2 more points. And then you can increase the intersection density to around 100 per square kilometers, that will add 5 points. And then narrow down the street blocks and also increase the percentage of narrow streets, that can give you another 2 points. And then we also have if you can increase the transit coverage to 95%, that will add another point. And then if you add the street wall coverage from 20 to 60%, that will add another 5 points. With this, you can actually, realistically improve the plan to reach 78 points, which is equal to the performance of the King's Crossing in London and also I believe it's the Trans-Bay Center in San Francisco. So this kind of input is really helpful for the client because they got really solid advice. And then after that project, we are thinking, well, if nowadays we have so many open source data, if we can harvesting that and automate the process, we probably can build a HDR urban design scoring system that we can put all the selected neighborhood and measuring to the same measuring stick. And then we will be an urban designer that gives really solid advice instead of just being a person with an opinion. So I intentionally listed my, I know everyone is talking about AI, but intentionally I set my title like this. I think AI right now is just the tools and urban designers is the agent. I live, work in the San Francisco area. I have a lot of friends in the AI industry, and they will probably be laughing at me. It's like, Nelson, you know what? In 2025, AI agent is going to be there. Yes, that's true. But in my opinion, because there are so many soft side, the social science side that we haven't been able to quantify, and there's a lot of political elements in there that we haven't been able to safely, comfortably hand it to the machine. So I think in the near future, urban designer is still going to be the agent, and AI is still going to be the tool, and the center focus should always be the community. And that's my slide. Thank you so much.